just a minute. I'll show you the picture. Okay, this is the stone cluster. This one's is about, it's over a meter diameter. It's like 1.5 meter diameter. So it's fairly large ones, and would serve for a kind of big group when they ate when they grill the meat, I guess. And you hardly find this kind of beautiful cluster, round, intense cluster. Normally what you find is the scattered ones, and broken pebbles and scattered sparsely, and it's not the concentration like this. So that would indicate the final stage of the pebble cluster before they moved to the next camp. You know, they stay here for a certain time, and they cooked the meat every day with a fired stone. But as you use it time and again, the stones start to break, you know, with the heat, and they will be broken in pieces and wouldn't serve as a cooker anymore. So they will extract those broken pieces, and the cluster will be smaller and smaller, and more sparse, and you know, finally they wouldn't be able to use it anymore and just abandon it and leave. Okay, so most of the stone clusters, pebble clusters we find at the site is like that, not like this. This is a rare example, and we were very lucky to find this, because you could tell the state of pebble cluster in use, almost in use, you know. So, and well, not today, but I will show you later the other examples of normal pebble cluster we find, the sparse ones. And so that you will be get some image of using those heated stones for heating, not cooking, not only cooking, but heating their tents. And that means those the spots with sparse distribution of heated stones, not like this one, may suggest the spot of not only cooking, but for tent spots, you know, may indicate the spots that they put up the tent. We don't know. There's no other indication of tents. So some of those left fragments of stones, heated stones, may suggest the location of the tent. Not very many people would say that. I'm thinking of that. And that's possible, of course. Highly possible. Okay, and while they were living in campsites, they must have done a lot of works, you know, including working with stones, stone tool making, and it depends on the material, but there's stones and bones, antlers, fangs, or trunk, or whatever that could have obtained from the animal, and other tools made of wood and animal skin or hide or fur, whatever. And, let's see. Oh, wait a minute. Oh, there's another reproduction of stone cooking. This is a stone steaming device. And the stone steaming always accompanies a hole. You have to have a pit, dug out pit, you know, another. And in there, you would heat lay out the stone, heated stone, and put animal meat and cover it with another layer of stone, heated stone. completely covered with this hot stone. Then this looks like grass, but they could just bury them with the earth too. And just bury them and pack it and leave it for about an hour or two, and it will be steamed and will be edible. And that's one of the major way of cooking in the earlier times, especially in Polynesia. In most of the islands, like Hawaii, Tahiti, even Easter Island, they did this stone steaming device called umu. And because, well, they could do the direct fire cooking, but was a lot better to use the heated stone, as the same reason as Paleolithic people, of course. And they did not have pottery, so they couldn't cook soup or stew or that kind of dish. So that was a major way of cooking things like meat and fish, whatever. So that means if Paleolithic people in Japan did practice the stone cooking device, you must find pits, right? But we don't find pits in Paleolithic layers. It's a bit difficult because normally when you dig a pits, like Jomon people dug a lot of pits and holes, but in later time, the other soil, darker black soil, came into the pit. So when you excavate the site today, you will find a round black area because the inside of the pit fills black soil, darker soil. So you can tell the location of the pit by the color of the soil. But in the Paleolithic time, everything is in loam, yellowish, reddish loam. So if you ever dug out the pit, and it will be buried, filled with the same soil as the outside. So you may not be able to find the pit by color, by the look. But still, we pay so much attention when we excavate the Paleolithic layers. And we will define those pits by not only by colors, but the hardness, softness of the soil. The filled area must be softer than the others, right? But we don't find those pits anyway. It's very, very rare case that if you can find those pits in the Paleolithic period. So I don't think they did this steaming device. They always stick to direct grilling device with a stone like this. We find a lot of these, uncountable of these. Every time we hit the Paleolithic sites, we always find one of those, not in this shape, but the cluster of the pebbles, heated pebbles. Okay, and so much activities, not very much activities could have been done in the Paleolithic time. They were not, they had to move around, so they couldn't just sit down for a long, long time and do all sorts of works like the later periods. And of course, they would go hunting and cutting the games like this, and making all kind of tools with antlers, bones, and the skin would be processed. He's scraping the inside of the skin. The fat sticks to the skin, and you have to scrape it off. So before you use the skin. So there are various type of work at the site, and if you, especially when you're making stone tools, the stones remain in the soil for many years. So you would be able to tell the spot that they were making stone tools. You will find a lot of tiny flakes and debris, tiny chips, and hundreds and thousands of those debris from the site. So you would eventually tell that they were making stone tools there. And too bad that Japanese soil, especially the loam, the volcanic ash, is acidic, a little bit acidic. So it accelerates the integration, disintegration of organic material. So we never find bones or antlers or skins or whatever. We haven't found any of those in Japanese territory. There's no exception. But in the same time period, like in the continent area, like Siberia, Europe, or Middle Asia area, they're finding a lot of organic material too. They have colder and some better condition with more calcium and not acidic, or and sometimes they have marshy, swampy, waterlogged sites of that period, so they would preserve some wooden material too. I will show you eventually. Okay, so it's very hard to tell about the detail of their activities in that time in Japan because of this loam soil. Everything disappeared. And in the Siberian area, they found a lot of stuff's made of bones and antlers like this, those Venuses. I showed you one Paleolithic replica of the Venus before that was made of bone. And these made of either bones or mammoth antlers, tusks, kibano. These Venuses are very distinctive. They're always female, as much as you can tell. Well, this is too much stylized, so you can't tell the sex. But in general, they are all female. And interestingly enough, this one, looks like wearing a cloth with a hood covering the head. The entire body is covered with this notches, decoration. So it looks like this notches may indicate the expression of the fur or something, animal fur. So she's wearing a full body coat, or how do you call that? Made of fur. It's in the Siberian area. It's cold even today. It must have been pretty cold at that time. And this one's so simplified, very stylized, and just a stick and probably head expression, but it has the same kind of notches as this one. So it may be representing woman or human body. Possible, that's highly possible, I guess. And this one also wearing this hood cloth, you see. And not very well. If you can find this kind of organic material, then you would be able to tell so many things, so many other things. But it's very hard in Japan. We have only stones and charcoal remains. Too bad. So, so the study of Paleolithic period in Japan is very, very slow. We only find only part of their culture, material culture, only stones. So, but still, we are learning a lot from those stone tool technology and stuff. So I'm going to tell today. All right. And even more difficult thing is talking about the society at that time. There's no almost no indication of the social characteristics at the time, but still we can guess from various elements. And the size of the group, as I mentioned already, the first the earlier part of the Japanese Paleolithic period, they had this big group hunting device so that they could survive. That was the best choice for them to catch large animal. But the basic is the kinship, as you can imagine, even in the older time, an earlier Paleolithic, which does not exist in Japan, but in continent and Africa. They were moving around always with the kinship group, or the kinship groups got together and cooperated and lived together. But the former half, it was a big group in Japan case, but the latter half became smaller naturally because of the volcanic events. And so the hunting method, of course, was changed. Well, in terms of tools, of course, they were using spears, mainly spears, a lot of spears, just to catch animal. But the device was changed from the former to the latter, from the big group hunting to the small group hunting. And of course, you have to always think about the marriage when you talk about the society. And if you're moving around, living with a close kinship group, then you may have trouble in DNA. So you always have to introduce other blood from other group, and they must have known that, with a long time experience. So it was very important for them to meet with the other group. One of the reasons the earlier phase group was big, probably was one of the reasons was this marriage. Different king group get together and live as a one big group, and they could exchange the young people in the group too, because they're from different king group, blood group. So that was one of the merits to live in a big group too. But in the latter half of the period, the groups became smaller. And but as I mentioned in the last lecture, they must have had more chances to meet with other group that's going around in other area. They could meet with various groups that's going around their area, you see. So they will have more chances to meet with other group and exchange a lot of things, stone tools, any kind of tools, and exchange meat, like dried meat, preservable dried meat and stuffs, and also information. I'm pretty sure they had exchanged a lot of information about the hunting, technology, stones, material, and of course they could exchange the people between groups. So anyway, so I would say that they had this very, very loose network, not the tight kind of, not the solid kind of network, but a very loose, not really planned network, by chance kind of stuff. But still they could survive with that. If they could meet with other group, they would be able to survive in a better ways, more food, more with tools, material, knowledge, technology, and stuff like that. And whether they had a classified society or not, And we all don't believe that. It's too complicated. This classified society, Kaikyu Shakai, classified society is too complicated for them. And there must have been no necessity of that. I'm pretty sure they had leaders, of course. The group always have to be led by somebody, Normally in the kinship group, normally it's the elders, old people, old men would know a lot of things. He lived for a long time, and he knows, he has the best knowledge, he has the best experience, and so he could decide things, So normally that's the leader, and that's not limited to Japan, it's for all the human beings. Elders are the major leader all the time. And that's why the early religion are closely related to the ancestral worship. Ancestors are very important, and so as the elders. So there must be old leaders in each group. Or sometimes those who, the member of the group who is very stout, very strong, and good at hunting, or something like that. He could fight with the elephant or something. And those particular people could have been leaders too. They can lead the group to survive, the strong guys. And also there is some possibility of some people like shaman. I don't know why, but normally it's mostly it's female. Female has the kind of characteristics, maybe. But the shaman type of people could have been the leader too, of course, because they could tell you the things normal people can't tell, like foreseeing, or sometimes it's medical things. They could pray for a curement of injury or something like that. They were also doctor function. And so in elders, strong guys, and shamans, well, sometimes some of the elders could be a shaman too, of course. But anyway, they must have had leaders, but that was only leaders. It's not the kind of person who concentrates the power and concentrates the wealth and, just gets the best amount of meat or something like that. No, that's not the case. They had to share the food, everybody. But they needed a leader. So there must have been leaders, but they were not the kings, they were not the power of the society. And division of labor, was there division of labor? That's hard to imagine too. Maybe some people would be very good at making things like stone tools. Some people are, how do you say that? とても器用でね、good at making beautiful tools in a very sophisticated manner or something like that. So he could be the major manufacturer of the stone tool, but not only one or two person would do that. Everybody has to work. Everybody has to make tools, and everybody has to do all kinds of works, not only stone tool making. So it's kind of hard to define the division of the labor at that time. It's all in guess, Nobody can prove it yet. But so much is the environment and the lifestyle of the Paleolithic. And we are now going into the material culture, actually, of the Paleolithic period. All right. Just a minute. Okay. I will change the size. sorry. The mistake once more. Okay. All right. And talking about the tools, of course, you have to talk about tools. That's the only thing you can find from the sites. And in ICU campus, there is a famous Paleolithic site called Location 15. That's located at the very west end of the campus. It's by the railroad way. And it's sitting on the slope. And if you go there, you still can see the sign that's indicating the location of the site, ICU site, location 15. That's been excavated like almost 50 years ago. It's a long, long time. And we haven't found any Paleolithic material since then, because every time we excavate the campus site, we didn't go too far, deep enough to hit the top of the loam. And that means the layer above the loam is the Jomon layer, Jomon culture layer. So we excavated and investigated Jomon culture a lot for 60 years, but we haven't gone down farther. And I'm pretty sure there's so much material underneath from the Paleolithic period. And last year, we were digging one area, southern part of the campus, southeast part of the campus, which they're building a faculty house right now. They're still building it. And of course, we found a lot of Jomon material. I'm going to show you later, but and it was part of the settlement, Muranoto desu ne, Mura no ichibu of the Jomon period. But at the last moment, this construction guys, they were planning to lay out those infrastructure like a water pipe or sewage. They were laying out the sewage, gesine. And so eventually we had to dig a little bit more deeper for that area. And we were digging deep into the loam and we didn't find anything except this one. This is the only stone tool we found. And after what, 40, 50 years, this is the first find that we made from the Paleolithic layer. This is a Paleolithic stone tool. Just a minute. Here you go. Let's see. This is it. The same thing. This is a flake. This is a fragment only. This is not the tool. It's not complete. This is the material, sozaine material, raw material to make into some kind of tools. And it's not very thick. This was flaked off from the original block of the stone, punching here, right here, punching here and flaked off. So that's why we call them flake. And so the back side is just flat, plain face. And the front side, you will see some faces, showing various times of punching and flaking off the small pieces from the original material, right? And this material is called, this stone is called green tuff, gyokaigan ですね。緑色凝灰岩, green tuff. And this is not the local stone. You don't find this in this area. And where you find will be northern Kanto area or up to southern Tohoku area, northern area, miles and miles away. So as a matter of fact, the people who abandoned this piece here on ICU campus actually traveled all the way up to the northern area in their hunting activities, or probably acquired this kind of material from the other group who came down from that area, the stone source area. You see? So this is a proof of human activity, of course. And I'm pretty excited about this one. All right. And let's see. Okay. I will explain about the stone tools. There are various types, tool types, like points. Of course, spearhead, 槍の先ですね, points. In archaeology, we call them projectile point, and knife-shaped tools. This looks like a knife because this part is very sharp, razor sharp. But actually, in the most of the cases, this was used as a point spearhead too. Not only this complete shape one, but this, different type of shape. But also has a very sharp points and sharp blade right here. So it's very easy for them to stab them into animal body. It's very sharp blade. So these were also used for points, spearhead too. And trapeze bears a sharp edge right here. So this could be another type of spear points too, if you halved it right here. And this is not pointed, but it's a sharp blade, so it's good for stabbing animal too. So there must have been a lot of types of hunting tools, not only this kind of spearhead. And other tools for working, like this would be this side scraper. This side is worked and has a minute flaking and forming a blade. And this type of tool must have been the general type of knives, cutting tools, you see. And there's another type of scraper right here. The end bears a blade, but this blade is not sharp. This is a cross section. This is angled. This is not sharp at all. These blades were not used for cutting, but scraper. As I mentioned, sometimes they had to scrape off the fat out of the animal skin and something like that. They could have been used for that kind of purpose. And sometimes you will find notched scraper. There's notch right here. And it could be used for shaving the haft wood stick to make a haft for the spear or other tools, to work with a stick, shaping stick. And another type is graver. Graver bears a blade right here. It's not too sharp, but it's very thick. You can't see it from here, but it has a thick blade, a very strong blade, so that you can use it as a working tool for hard material, not only wood, but something like bones and antlers. When you make Venuses, you have to have a very, very strong bladed tool. And this would be one of those, graver, choki. We may call it in Japanese chokokuto too, chokokuto. Yeah. And owl, perforator, pointed, tiny points to make holes, like when you work with animal skin, when you want to make a cloth or a tent or whatever, you have to sew them together, right? So you perforate the edge of the animal skin, and then you sew it with a needle and strings. We don't find any needles in Japan, but there are so many examples found in continent, and they were made of bones, very fine needles made of bone, very sharp. And on the other end, it has a hole, just like the needles we use today in metal, though. The same shape of needles. I'll show you in the picture later. And other type of tools like piece ski. We don't know about this one. This is kusabigata sekki って言うんですけどね. The both ends were worked to form, this is a cross section, to form a sort of a blade, but it's not really a blade. So maybe when you want to crack an animal bone, you would make groove, straight groove with this one, and put this into the groove and punch it from outside and then crack the bone or something like that. You know, any kind of works, they could be used, but we're not too sure about the actual function of this tool, but we find it a lot. And chopper, this is different type of tools. And it's really simple tool. It's made of pebble, and you don't have to prepare a good quality stone. You just pick up any pebble around you, and you can make this. And you punch it roughly several times and make rough blade, very coarsely made blade. And they must have been used for very coarse, very heavy duty work, like what, breaking something big, or it's like a machete, nata みたいなね、使い方ですね. I'll show you one example. This is not the real one, but here. Here's a pebble, and only one end is worked here, punched from one side, several times along the edge, and there's a blade, very thick blade, so that you can use it for punching and breaking something roughly, And this chopper, what we call chopper, is one of the oldest stone tools that human beings ever made. The earliest examples of stone tools in history are all these. Very basic and very fundamental type of tool. And interestingly enough, it never lost function in the Stone Age, even in the later Paleolithic period, or even in Neolithic period, or even in case of Japan, Jomon period. They still use this kind of tools. It has a particular function. No other fine tools cannot do this kind of work. The finer, smaller tools can't do the work like this one can do. So they always needed this one. So they always made this one. You find it all the way through. This is a chopper. Okay. And blade is not the tool. Blade is also the material, like flakes. Blade were to be made into other type of tools. Actually, these points, knives, and other scrapers and stuffs were made from those blades, because they have developed a technology called blade technique. And this blade core is the remain of flaking of these blades from the original stone. You see the parallel lines, from each side. So when you find these, they obviously have this blade techniques, blade technique. That's highly sophisticated way of making stone tools. All right, and this shows the transition of the assemblage of the tools. This 10 is a 10th layer. This is the earliest phase of Japanese Paleolithic. And 4 upper. We have 3 on top of this. 3 is the latest, the most new phase of Paleolithic. It's cut right here at the 4. There's still a knife-shaped tool, trapeze, scraper, awl, and other type of tools are compared in quantity and the assemblage rate. You know, knife-shaped tools were not very popular at the first stage, but it became more and more popular, as you can see. And interestingly enough, there's the axe, polished axe, partially polished axe appeared from the first stage and kept a little bit later, until a little bit later, but disappears, never appears again. And this is a hammerstone. Most of the time they were very prominent. Well, they have hammerstones in this phase too, because they always needed hammers for making stone tools and other work. Anyway, so this is one of the assemblage transition of one site from one site, and you can tell they were not always making the same kind of tools. This is another chronology, stone tool chronology, and you see the same kind of layer, sign, a Roman numeral. 3 is the latest phase. Still, the latest phase still has this chopper right there, you see. So, and this is another chopper down there too. So they were always making choppers. They needed it. And you may realize that the stone tool forms of the stone tool changes from time to time. In earlier stage, you don't really have much form. Well, these are flakes, so they must have made them into knives and stuff. So not in a very uniform type of stone tool they made. And the size is kind of larger ones. But in later time, it becomes smaller and smaller. And the form kind of unified. They're all pointed and same form, same kind of technology to make them into tools and stuff like that. So obviously they must have had this change of technology and I would say development of the technology. All right, and in the earliest stage, this is the one of those axes. And as you can see, it's shining. The blade is polished. Blade is polished, not the other part, only the blade. Blades are polished. And in the last lecture, I explained that the Paleolithic is characterized by chipped stone tools. That was the only technology they had, not the polished stone tools until Neolithic period, right? There was a major difference between Paleo and Neolithic, Paleolithic and Neolithic, chipped stone tool or chipped and polished tool, right? But that's the definition of the world except Japan, because we have this polished tools in the Paleolithic period. It's not Paleolithic at all, So it's a kind of mystery. We don't know why. And it appears from the very first stage, earliest stage in Japan, but it disappears in time. Doesn't last for the entire Paleolithic period. So it's really a mystery. We don't know about the function of these because at the time, of course, there were tree conifers only, and they must have used some tree resources for making tents, making hafts, of the spear, yari no e desu ne, and other material. So they needed something, some tools to cut the tree down. Well, not the huge tree, but you know. But if the trees were not huge, you don't have to have axe. You can work with other kind of, like a chopper and stuff like that, and you can easily cut down the smaller trees and branches and things. So it's not really necessary to have one of these. So some of the scholars, some of the archaeologists would say that these were not used for cutting trees, but probably they were used for cutting elephants, like big mammals. You know, it's a lot of work to cut those huge animal, especially when you have to loosen the joints and things like that, their knees, and you know, joints are very hard to cut. So they must have used these for cutting joints. That's one theory. I don't know. I don't know about that. And we don't find these in quantity either. We only find occasionally. So it's a mystery. They're very interesting. It's obviously worked, polished, played. All right. And some people would insist they were making boats with these, but I don't know. They must have they must have more of these. If you were to make boats, you know, a lot of people must have worked with the axe. All right. And the most major tools in the Paleolithic time is a knife-shaped tool, as you can see here. And this is kind of exceptionally large one. These are the normal size, like it's not, they're not a very big one. At the most 5 centimeters, 2 inches. 2 inches are kind of rare. It's even smaller, normally 1 inch, more or less. And very small but pointed, always pointed, and there's a sharp blade on one side, top side, here, and here, and here. Oop, sorry. And so these could be, of course, used as knives, cutting tools, but since they were bearing very sharp points at the end, and we estimate that these were also used for spear points, or they must have been the major spear points, because in the stage that they were using this kind of, these are all knife-shaped tools, in this stage, we don't find any spear points like this one. As a matter of fact, this kind of spear points appear in the very last stage of the Paleolithic period. So until they got to that point, you know, they had to have other kind of spears, right? So they had this one and this one. We don't find these very much either. So major spear point was a knife-shaped tool. It's not a knife, it's a spear point. Okay, we'll show you some examples. This is a spear point. I showed you at the very beginning of the class. It's very large, fairly large. And this type of beautiful spear point appears only in the last phase of the period. They never had this for hundreds and thousands of years. And this is a reproduction. This is made by an archaeologist in a Gunma prefecture. He's so good at making these. Beautiful, very thin and very sharp and beautiful. Made of obsidian of Hokkaido, northern island. Can you see the red part? Not only black. Normally, most of the obsidian are black, but sometimes it has an iron inside and shows red color. It's beautiful stuff. And let's see. I'll show you some knife-shaped tools. This is the earlier type of knife-shaped tool. See, can you see? It's very pointed, very sharp, but very thick too, as you turn it around, and it's not thin. So this is kind of earlier type of knife-shaped tool, which obviously was used as a point, as a spearhead, you know, but not very big. It's like a 5-6 centimeter only, right? And but in later time, it becomes thinner and thinner. This is another type of knife-shaped tool. This is tiny. It's only 3 centimeter, about an inch long. And made of a very coarse type of obsidian, different from that one. And it has a pointed end, and very sharp edge right here, very sharp. Can you see? And this could be used if you hold it like this. This could be, if you use this sharp edge, it could be used as knives, cutting tools, but also could be used as a spear point. This tiny thing could be a spear point, as long as it's sharp and pointed, right? And they did, because at this time period, they never had this real spear. We never find this kind of spears from this layer. So these are also the points. And another one, another pointed knife-shaped tool. This edge is very sharp, but this is very thin. You see, it's very thin. And this is obviously made from the blade technique. So it's the later type of tools. I mean, they had this blade technique all the way through, but the technique itself was so much advanced later. This is the blade. You see, very thin, simple flake, but it's always parallel on sides and always bear this parallel line, and showing that it was flaked off from the material, not only one piece, but you know, a series of these were flaked off one by one. That's the blade technique. We'll explain it later. All right. And so these were the points. Major hunting tool. You know, they had to hunt elephants with these. You know, so how many of these you need? How many of spears you have to use just to get one elephant? You know, you can't imagine. So they made a lot of these. And we'll find a lot of these from the sites. Okay, about the blade technique. You have the nodule, original stone material, cut in half and make a platform, what we call platform, the flat face. And from the edge of the platform, you punch it down and flake off the series of this kind of material. You see? So these are the blades, and these are the blade cores. And I should explain more of this. This is kind of hard to understand. So let me use the whiteboard. You have a material here. You're looking from the top. This is a platform. And you punch it here and flake it off. And next one, and next one, and next one. You see? Either way. So the material like this one would be bearing one line right here, because this line is the edge of this one. See? So the edge of this one showing on this other blade. And you just take off the surface area, surface skin area, then you will start real blade taking right here. You see, this would be something like 2 parallel lines here and here. Can you see? Is it too small to see that? Wow. See, here and here, 2 points, these lines. You know, and next one right here, next one right here, always bearing 2 points, 2 points. You see? So you are always getting the same shape, same size, same thickness of material. And why this technology is good? Because if you just break a stone, if you have a material like this and just break it with no plan or no certain way methods, you just waste them away. Most of them will be the debris. You don't get the, you can't use it efficiently, you see? So they invented this one. I don't know who invented this, but probably somebody else outside Japan. So because we find it a lot all over the world. So this technology was also brought in from outside, I guess, but this is very clever. So you don't waste the material. You can always get the same size of material. And this blade can be made into all kinds of other tools, like points and what, scrapers and knives and whatever. You see, that's the process. Okay. And so since this blade technique was introduced, I mean, developed, highly developed, then you would see this phenomenon. The pieces are becoming smaller and smaller because from one size of material, you can get so many if you make the blades smaller, right? You can break them into smaller blades and you can get the blades in quantity. You can make so many tools out of those. So this is what happened. Get smaller and size and shape is unified and they're all pointed. And even though they were small, they were good hunting tools. So they could get more and more tools from the same material. That's a trick. But finally, at the very, very final stage of Paleolithic period, after they were using this spear point shape stuff, they also developed this blade technology into more sophisticated, more types called microblade. Oh, before that, I have to show this. You see, the original stone material made into some certain shape and always get the platform by breaking the top and straight down, flaking down to get the blades, you know, series of blades. And each blade would be made into, this is upside down, but this is a knife shape too, pointed and one side blade. And this is a scraper, end scraper, side scraper, and graver, awl, and notched scraper, whatever that is. You can make anything out of those. So this was very, very important technology at the time. This is a blade taking, actually. This is an obsidian block, and this is a platform, flat face. And he's putting this up. He's putting one piece of bone or antler at the end of the platform, at the edge of the platform, and punching it with other antler. Then this blade would come off, It's just the moment that this blade came off. And this is not very easy. You have to be really good. You have to be really used to making blades. I've tried so many times, but I'm not good. I'm not good as Paleolithic people. But when you can make a beautiful blade in this manner, you will hear a beautiful tone, very glassy, very hard, high tone, metallic tone. King, but when you fail to make a beautiful one, it doesn't sound right. You can tell by the sound. Anyway, and see, this is an example of one face unifacial tool. This is a blade, back of the blade. The front of the blade used to bear 2 lines only, but it was worked from the sides, so much working, covering the entire surface to make something like a point. But it was only worked on one side. They did that in the earlier phase, fairly for a long time, but like knife-shaped tools, this kind of tools, they always have unworked back. You see all the working right here along the edge, all the working, but they never show any working phases in the back. They're always flat. But in a later time, it was developed into bifacial tools. Both sides would be worked, like the spear point that I showed you, the obsidian one. See, this is bifacial. Both sides, both faces were worked fully. So you don't see the original face of the material. So this is the most sophisticated type of tools in the Paleolithic period, except this new technology called microblade. The final phase of the stone tool technology is the microblade technique. You make something like a fat spear or scraper or whatever, but it's not the tool. It's still the material. You break off the top and make a very fine, very narrow strip of platform right here. Then you start punching the edge and get this micro blade, tiny blade. Same thing as this blade, but they are small in size. In order to get the small ones, you have to go through all kinds of process. It's very, very complicated and very difficult to make one of these. I spent so much time trying to reproduce one of these, but it's very, very hard. And I think I've shown you some of these microblades at the US Museum, the very first lecture. And as I mentioned, these were designed for planting type of tools. These microblades are planted alongside the bone stem. There's a notch on both sides and they're planted. Maybe fix it with a resin or something. 樹脂かなんかでね、固めるんですかね。And this is another type of planted microblades. This is a huge one found in Europe. It's a big bone. And as you can see, you see, this is a cross section. You see the notch, tiny notch on both sides, and microblades were planted into this notch like this, a series of blades. And the good point about this microblade technique is that, did I explain about this? Maybe not. If you, when you are making a solid spear point, like I've showed you, very solid, one piece spear like this, and you use it of course, you're catching animal and you use it and it breaks. It's glass. Obsidian is a volcanic glass, so easy to break when you use it, right? And what would you do? The tip will be broken and become like this. And you don't want to abandon it. It's a precious, precious material. Can't get it easily. So you will bring it back and work it again and make smaller points out of this. You rework it, you recycle it. Yeah, that's often the case. But if you are using something like this, and maybe parts of this blade will be broken, and some parts will be hopping out. But you bring it back and just plant another one into the broken part. Then you will have the new, brand new spear again. It's a lot easier, right? And you're not wasting the material either. Like if you are making this is very easy way to understand the stone tool technology. If you have a raw material like this, and if you're making this chopper, you know, by just punching several times and making rough, coarse blade, then you will have something like, what, 4 inches blade, 10 centimeter blade as a length of the blade only. But if you have the same material, better quality stone though, and if you use this blade technique, the blade bears very sharp edge on both sides, right? So one blade will be like 10 centimeter, and this one blade would bear 20 centimeter blade on the sides. They're sharp. And you may be able to, let's say, like 20, 30 of these from the same size of stone in this manner, right? So that means how long the blade would be in total. 20センチかける20, like 4 meters, 6 meters, maybe if you're good at it, maybe 10 meters of blade you can get from the same material. You see? And how about the microblade? Hundreds of meters of blade from one same size of material. That's a very efficient way of using the material, right? So that's the major development of technology of stone tool. And this is the peak of it. It's very, very hard to make. I made this one, but these are not as good as the real ones. Oh, I'll show you some pieces right here. I brought. These are all fakes. I made these, you know, this is obsidian points, not like this. But actually, we don't find the actual artifacts of this size, hardly. But normally what we find is this one. This is a bigger one, if you can find these. And knife-shaped tools, so kind of big one. Pointed and one side blade, very sharp to stub. And sometimes knife-shaped tools would look like this. It's not slanted, it's not pointed, but it has a sharp blade at the top. So it stubs the animal well. And the scraper, can you see it from the side? The blade at the one end is not very sharp. It's not knife sharp, you know. So it's a scraper. You can use it like scraping the fat off the skin or something like that. And this is kind of large one. This is a side scraper. The edge is worked. Can you see the tiny worked faces? See? The difference between this unworked sharp edge and worked edge, blade, these are not very stable. I mean, they're not strong. When you use it, it's easy to break because it's so sharp. You know, by using it, it breaks. It's glass, so it breaks easily. But once you work it, and it's not as sharp as knives, but it has a very strong blade. So it's durable, very durable, very strong blade. So it probably is the normal type of knives, cutting tools, side scrapers we call. And there you go. Oop. Microblades. Ah, hard to hold. It's a tiny, tiny things. This is the longest one I could make. It's about 2-3 centimeters. Very sharp, very thin. And these were planted along the wood or bone, you know, in series. And also the good point about this microblade is that you can make anything, knives, points, whatever. You know, you can plan out, you can design a stem. You can make a bent blade too. In later time, like Neolithic, you know, like in Middle East and Egypt, you will find antler, curved antler with blades all planted inside. So it's a sickle, kama used as a sickle. And so you can make free design tools by using one of these microblades. And you can decide the size, small ones, big ones, shape, whatever type of tools. So you got a freedom of making any kind of tools by using the same microblades. That's another merit. All right. Oh, and this is the only stuff which is not the fake. This is a real artifact. This is the microblade core. Can you see the vertical parallel line? I will make it sideways. Can you see? Maybe not. You see parallel lines, fine parallel lines all the way around. I don't have to see light. You see? Vertical lines, series of vertical lines showing that these were microblade cores. Yeah, thick enough. There's another example. This is made of different quality stone. This is from the northern Japan. This is not obsidian. This is a shale. Shale. It's Shale. Shale. Very hard stone. See, you can see obviously the perfectly fine lines. These are also the microblade cores. So this was the highlight of the stone tool technology. And this doesn't appear all over the world. This is only Japan or the area around, adjacent area only. You don't find it in anywhere else. They have a lot of blade techniques, but not the microblades. Okay. Oh, I went too far. Okay, let's have a break. It's 4:37, so let's have 12 minutes break. Let's start from 4:50. All right. I'm sorry. Okay, let's have a break. So oops. It's complicated. Okay. So they could use wood material, sometimes wood spear. Of course, you have to have haft for spears. You know, they would use a lot of wood to sticks too, and spear thrower, and bone needles, bone material. We don't find any other tools made of bone except for in some parts of Siberia and Europe, not in Europe, but the Eurasian continent. They're finding tackles like harpoons, same bone and antler tools as harpoons for catching fish and those marine resources. So, so there must be a lot more of the type of tools made of bones and other organic material at the time. Of course, they could use anything that's possible. And antlers, fawns, and tasks, whatever can be used. Including tendon and intestine, guts, and hair, even hair could be used for something else. Anything. You know. And how about the liquid vessel? Liquid vessel. You know, they're wanderers. They have to have canteen. They have to bring water. Well, they stick to the water source where they camped. So if you try to find the Paleolithic sites, you always go to the original water source, like a river, along the river, or spring, or pond, or whatever, where they could acquire the clear water. Then you would normally find this Paleolithic sites easily. But while they're moving, you know, they should need to carry some water with them in the canteen. But we haven't found anything of those. And no plant material like gourds, hyotan みたいなね, gourds or anything existed in the glacial period in most of the area. But probably animal skin, hide, can be made into a canteen. You know, animal skin were used so much in later time, in historic time, to make a canteen too. You know, sew it up tightly. So they could have had that kind of canteens too, but we don't know. And or tree barks, 皮ね、木の皮, tree barks, or even a wooden vessel like bowls and, you know, things could have been made, but nobody have found anything of that sort from the sites. So we don't know. It's still a mystery. And so many things we don't know about this period. And talking about the spiritual culture, it's even harder, you know, because there are so many tools, stone tools and pebbles and anything related to those, but they don't show very much of their spiritual culture, except for those Venuses and some body ornaments. Not very many, but there are some. But not in Japan. There's only something like this. This is found in Oita. Well, we call it figurine, stone figurine, but we don't know. It's like a club. It looks something like eyes, you know, two round, sort of round depression, maybe mouth, one depression, large depression, maybe nose or something. Looks like a doll, kokeshi, but it may be something related to their spiritual culture too, like Venus's, but we don't know yet. Obviously, it's not a natural material. It's worked, so it could be a tool too. Could be a hammer or something, but we don't know. And about the ornaments, we're not finding too many. In Japan, we only found several of these from Hokkaido. It's only examples. But beads made of stone, beads and probably perforated pendants would be the one. But the same kind of stuffs were found in China and Russia and all kinds of other areas too. So there may be, this one's very prominent. This is a necklace with beads and little stuffs, pendants made of a mammoth bone, found in the Marita site in Siberia. And some of these fungs of wolves and dogs, okami to inune, were also perforated anite and used as either pendants or necklace. So they have these body ornaments, obviously, but for any reasons we don't really know. And this is the examples from Hokkaido, Japan. You know, it's pretty clear that they're choosing the material, green, beautiful stone for beads, and these are olivines, kanranseki, olivines, made of olivines. They're black type of olivines too. And so these are the only stuffs we have found in Japan in the Paleolithic layers. So we don't really know about it, but there may be some cases that you might be able to explain about these fungus. You know, the wolves at that time were very scary for to human beings. They could take your lives easily. They're very strong and they could attack you in group. And probably so many human beings were eaten by wolves at the time. And they knew, I'm sure they knew the wolves are very dangerous and strong, stronger than human beings. And so that may be the reason why they bore the pieces of wolf fangs to their bodies. You know, they esteemed such power of nature, power of the animal, wild animal. And the strongest part, the most dangerous part of the wolves are the fangs, right? Not the fingernails, but the fangs. So they put them into pendants, ornaments, and put them onto your body, just for which to gain that power, natural force to your body. That's one theory. That could happen in the coastal area too. Many coastal prehistoric people also made pendants out of the shark teeth. Shark teeth. Sharks is the most dangerous and most strongest animal in the ocean. And since people use the marine resources, ocean resources, they went into the ocean, and sharks were the most fearful existence. And teeth were the most dangerous and most powerful part of the shark. So they put their shark teeth onto their body. You know, the same story. And they, in the later time, like Jomon period, they made so many pottery and so many designs, decorations added to the pottery. And some of them are obviously snakes. And some of the snakes are poisonous, you know. So that's also the most very dangerous and fearful existence for human beings. But they esteemed thought them as a very important thing, and put them on their pottery too. So, well, we don't know in detail, but probably that's the reason why they try to bear ornaments. Well, Of course, some of the stones are very pretty and beautiful, and some of the shells, like these shells, may be purely for decoration because they're beautiful. They want to wear the beautiful parts onto your body. Well, of course, that could be also true, but they must have had a reason for bearing ornaments. And so many things can be explained from the material culture about talking about the spiritual culture. And like imitating and creation. Well, they all made same kind of stone in certain area, right? And why is that? Because the stone tools in particular types are very good, very functional, and they imitated the others. But still, they tried to make their own creative new type of tools too. So imitation and creation is both exists in human minds, you know. And in order to improve, in order to develop the tools and material culture, you have to have creative ability. You have to create something. You have to really look at something and observe it and think, and develop a new thing. That's a creation. And in that manner, all the technology has been developed, even in the stone tool age. And also, were there any ritual, religious, ceremonial activities? We don't know. But looking at those Venuses and other stuffs related, probably they must have had some kind of meeting with a certain activities, specific activities like a ceremonial ritual or something like that. We're not sure yet, but it's really natural to imagine about those activities too. And did they have any sense of beauty? We don't know. But as long as we look at those stone tools, they are beautiful. They are very functional and beautiful. And they do not look really ugly, even to the present people like us. And well made. So I'm pretty sure they had this sense of beauty. The sense may be different quality from us, but still, they liked the beautiful thing. Like the beads made of olivine, they chose the beautiful green transparent stone for beads. So they must have had this sense of beauty too. Well, I want you to remember that these people, Paleolithic people in Japan, later, what, Homo sapiens, and just as us, we are all Homo sapiens. And basically, fundamentally, Homo sapiens are Homo sapiens. There's not much difference between Paleolithic people and us in terms of ability and in terms of intellectual ability too. So we are the same people. Maybe if you bring down some Paleolithic people right here, and if we can communicate, then we can make friends to each other. That kind of, same people. So they should have. It's natural to imagine about their sense of beauty, sense of what existence, a ritual, and all kinds of spiritual activities. And symbolism, like those fangs pendants and shakti pendants, whatever, would show the symbol of the power, symbol of the fearful power, big power that human cannot obtain. And bear those symbols would be the seen as those pendants and all other ornaments. You see, it's everything in imagination still, but that's highly possible. In burial, we don't find much burial, not very many. But one stage before Homo sapiens, that's Neanderthalensis, Neanderthalgen, Homo neanderthalensis. In their stages, they made graves. They obviously intentionally made graves to bury their family. And there are several cases of that. And they even put flowers into the burial with the body. They're finding a lot of pollen inside the grave, not from the outside, but inside the grave. So it's obvious that they had mind of burying their family. So I'm sure they had the same thing in the Homo sapiens in the Paleolithic time too, but we haven't found those, so we can't tell anything about the graves. You know, they're moving around, so they would not be able to stabilize a burial ground. I mean, like a cemetery, burial spots, certain burial places, but you know, whenever your family member, like elders, die, or a baby died, or somebody died in an accident, stepped by elephants or something like that, would bury them at that place. But they didn't leave any sign, like a gravestone or anything. So we can't really tell which was a grave or burial. How about the languages? We can't prove that at all, you know, and there's no writings at the time, of course. But you have to have a sort of complicated communication device when you are living together in group, especially when you're engaged in activities like hunting or working, like stone tool working, or, you know, any kind of works. You just don't shut up and do it, you know, all by yourself. You just communicate and exchange information to each other. So I'm pretty sure they had this sort of complicated languages at the time. And the body-wise, their skeletal, especially the skull, your mouth part, inside the mouth, there's a ceiling part, you know, upper part of the mouth. And in the Homo sapiens skeletons, I mean skulls, the ceiling of your mouth is very high and wide compared to the earlier human beings. And like apes and monkeys, compared to those animals, the ceiling of your mouth room is very high, and you have more rooms in your mouth. And that indicates that you have more freedom of moving your tongue around. You have enough space. And that means you could control your sound, your voice, and produce various types of sounds, which is inevitable to the language, spoken language. So it's pretty possible, almost sure that they have this certain communicating language in various area and various culture. All right. And also, there are some examples that I may be able to show you about these human activities that represents the human activities of that time, maybe including some emotion too. This is a site that I excavated many years ago in Japan, in Tokyo, the Paleolithic layer. And those dots are stone tools and debris, flakes and chips, all scattered around. And this is one cluster. This is another one. This is the end limit of the site. we didn't excavate the area beyond. This is a wall. So this cluster must extend to this area, but we only found this much for this cluster. And this lower cluster obviously is a remain of some guy or lady, or I don't know, making stone tools right here. But as you look at it closely, you may realize something. This is sort of a crescent shape. It's not just a circle. It's kind of crescent, curved area of concentration. Now, what does that mean? We're trying to decipher this distribution. What's the meaning of this particular form of distribution? Just in case, this left is the south, right is north. Nobody? Maybe this vacant area, this is the very spot that this guy was sitting or standing. I don't know, sitting maybe. This is the man's spot. And he was making stone tools right here, facing south, facing to the light. You know, you want more light when you work, when you do something, you know, minute. So maybe he's facing this way, and all the debris would fly around him, but some of them would fly to himself, but it will hit himself and fall down. He would not go beyond. He would not go behind him, right? So that's why it's crescent, maybe. So this is his location. It was facing south. And how about the concentration rate? This part is more concentrated, more quantity, more in number too, compared to this side. What does that mean? He's working, he's chipping a stone.
Was he right-handed?
Maybe, that's possible, quite possible. If you hold the tool on your right hand, and if you hold the material on the left hand and work, then many of the debris would fly towards the right side. And probably that's what it is. Also, let's see. Oh, let's go to this one. This is only tiny concentration, but you can tell something from these two. And those two triangles are these stone tools in picture. And these are the base of the spear point, butt part of the spear point. And they fit together like this. Those two pieces fit together like this. And these were made of obsidian, but not in good quality, kind of poor quality obsidian. So kind of easy to break. And as you observe these stone tools here, you will be able to tell that these were broken in the process of making it. I will explain it on the whiteboard. Something like that. It looked like that. You know, it was making a spearhead, you know, long one. And I think I think it's quite obvious that this part was broken before he worked right here. Took them off here. It's obvious from the observation of the stone itself. And this part was broken first. And you can tell, oh, that's real natural. You know, the butt part was broken off. So he had to make the butt all the way again. So he started to shape it, you know, into the round shape. You know, took this part off. And then this part was broken while he was working here. And he gave up. You know what I mean? You see, this part is worked to make it round, not straight, you know, and this part is last. So this part was broken first. He made it all the way to here. It's beautifully made, but it was broken. So he gave up this piece. And next he started to work here. Then this part broke again. So he gave up and threw them away right here. You see? I'm pretty sure he was mad. Another pieces, 2 pieces, white triangle, way apart, but they fit together like this. You know, small piece and bigger piece. This is, he was trying to make knife shape tool. This side is sharp. And he was trying to make it pointed right here. He was working here. And this one was broken. And this could be the leftover from the top of this. We're not sure. This doesn't fit together, so we are not sure. But the same quality of obsidian right here, easy to break. And he was making this, and this slanted line, this is the breakage. And 2 pieces went apart like this. Why they are all apart? These were all together in the cluster, you know, these broken pieces, and he resigned. He just threw it away. I mean, not away, but threw it into the cluster. But these were apart. Why? Of course, we can't know the truth. We don't know the real fact, real story, but we can make up a story in some ways by from these evidences that I've been talking about. You know, he's been working on this, and he 2 times was broken, and he was very tired of it. But he was started making another type of tool, and broke again. And probably he was very, very mad. He was tired of it. And he, instead of leaving them here, he threw them away, apart. I don't know, maybe. It's kind of interesting to imagine about those things from those evidences, right? Okay, so many things could be recovered and reconstructed from various evidences left at the site. Even only stones would tell you so many things. And this is a pebble cluster that we normally find, not the intact one that I've shown you. You know, it's all scattered and broken in pieces. But this is type A, well, tentatively I will call it type A. And there's another cluster, type B. What's the difference between A and B? Can you tell? How about the size of the stones? Tiny, huh? Tiny pieces in the B. It's larger in A type. It's obviously different. These are all fired stones. You can see reddish color stones too. And these are, many are broken in pieces. But these are all broken pieces in tiny size. You know, I don't think anybody can use it for anything. It's just a cluster of debris instead of this one. You still have a larger size of pebble in rather concentration. And you might be able to use it still as a cooking place, but not this one, right? It's obviously different. And what makes the difference? What's your explanation? And what I estimate is that this is the main place. This is a main cooking place. This was. But they used it so many times, and the stones went broke and in pieces and pieces, smaller and smaller. And they would extract small fragments out of the main cooking place and threw them to the side. So this is a debris place, the waste place of the broken pebbles. And this is the main place. That's one explanation I can make. You see? And probably that's true. You can't use these, you know. So this is obviously a wasting, gomisteba, waste place. And in many cases, you will find a lot of debris from stone tool making, flakes and chips with those two. So I'm pretty sure they knew where to dump things. They decided certain location to dump the material, whatever that is, stone tool, debris, or pebble fragments. You see, this is gomisteba. Okay, so that's one explanation we could make from this kind of features. Okay, other thing. Oh, okay, let's have a break, another break. It's 5:45, 5:45. So let's start again from 55. 5 minutes before 6, right? Okay. All right, a little more about the spiritual culture. Well, I'm not really talking about spiritual culture, but you know, what we can do from archaeological side to reconstruct the activities and what they're thinking and stuff like that. It's very hard, very difficult, but it's not possible, I believe. Another evidences that I want to show you is the overlapping of artifacts. This is another site I excavated in Tokyo of the Paleolithic period. And you see the distribution of the material. And there are 3 types of marks, large black spots, dots, and tiny fine spots, and white circle, 3 kinds. And this lower part would show you the cross section you're looking at from the side. And this is a plan you're looking at from the above. And the same thing. And these 3 marks represents the different layer, different culture, and different time of the occupation. And there are like hundreds and thousands of years, maybe not thousands, but hundreds of years away to each other, different time, those 3 types. But you can see the black dots, larger dots, rather on top part, and white circles on the bottom part, and tiny dots in the middle, right? And when you see the distribution plan, those three types are kind of overlapping to one spot in this area too. Not the tiny dots here, but the two kinds are mixed right here. Three kinds are mixed right here. Not in here, not in other part, not in here. And they are showing the same concentration of the same spot, although they are far apart and they are different people. The different group came a long time after the other, but showing same occupation area. It's overlapping onto each other. Why? Why is that? Can you think of any reason? So three groups of people belong to different time. So they don't know each other. They don't see each other, of course, hundreds of years away. Why this is a particular spot they liked? There's a hint in the cross-section. They're also overlapping in the cross-section too. You know, they're not clearly separated in three layers. They're kind of mixed around here, right? You see, this white circle guys, this group came here and made stone tools right here, and here too, right? Okay, they left the debris, flakes and chips right here. Maybe they took the stone tools, final goods away with themselves, but they left the debris waste right here. And after that, nobody came for a long, long time, and it was buried underground. But as you can see in the cross section, they are not laid out in straight line, flat ground. Some stuffs were moved around, as I mentioned before. You know, any kind of reasons, plant reasons, animal reasons, but things move around in the ground when it's shallow. So some of the debris goes up to the surface. I think I told you about that. And after how many years, I don't know, the next group, tiny dot group, came here. When they came here, they saw it. They saw some debris, flakes and chips on the surface. And what would they think? They must have thought that, oh, somebody came here before and made stone tool and left the debris. Then they made the stone tool right there at the same spot. And the same thing happens when they left, stuff's moved around. Maybe partly some of the fragments were visible when the last guy, those larger dot group came. They saw it on the surface and learned that, oh, somebody else came here and made stone tools. Then they did the same thing at the same place. What does that mean? Well, it's obvious that they all had the concept of place, concept of the place. Waste place is a waste place. You know, cooking place is a cooking place. Tent area is tent area. They clearly have the sense, concept of the place. They can distinguish, they can decide which is which. And if they find the debris place, the waste place, they would use it as a debris place. Again, the same thing. So for all three groups, this was a debris place because they learned this was the debris place before. Not the first group, but the other two groups followed the same thing. You see, that's one of the characteristics of human beings too. Even today, we do the same thing. There is a famous logic in New York, in the States, broken window logic. Have you heard of that? The Manhattan area, the downtown area was used to be very dangerous. The gangs fooling around, and the city were perplexed. What to do? They didn't know what to do. But this mayor decided to fix all the broken glasses of the window. They were broken by gangsters and young guys, and always broke the window glass. And they fixed them all perfectly. And the delinquency decreased. 犯罪が減った。窓を修復したらね、犯罪が減った。And that's the case, same case. That's the concept of the place. If you see a broken window, then you would learn, oh, this is that kind of place. So I can break the window too. Something like that. But if they are in shape, in beautiful shape, then you would not dare break the window. You would not start it. Maybe somebody would do, but that's what I mean by concept of the places. And this is the same thing probably happened in the Paleolithic time. This is a waste place, so we would do the same thing again. And we see a lot of this overlapping phenomenon in the Paleolithic layers, sites, all the time. Well, almost every time we excavate the Paleolithic sites, we find this overlap of the different layers, different cultures overlapping. So probably that's the case. And anything else? And same story as this pebble cluster. They had this cooking place and waste place, clearly divided, of course. And in many cases, in later time, this area was partly buried, but still in some parts are visible on the surface. Then they would do stone tool making over here, right there. And that's the case. We find a lot in Paleolithic sites. You see? So that's not a big thing. That may not be a big thing, but it's very interesting to see that we could approach what they were thinking, their concepts and things like that. They would not do intentionally. It's unconscious thing maybe that we all have as a human beings. We have always the concept of the place. Okay. All right. Okay, so much for the material culture and the society. I'm sorry, I can't really explain in a better manner about the spiritual culture and the social affairs in the Paleolithic period. It's very, very difficult, as you can tell. All right, I have some more time, so we would go into Jomon culture after this, but I haven't distributed the material, so I would add something here. Just a minute. Well, as you might have realized, this archaeology work is just like a detective work, You're trying to collect the evidences whatever that is, big or small, you try to collect as much as possible and use them as material to explain or reconstruct what happened, who did it. It's like a detective story. It's really like a detective work too in archaeology. So there will be another example that I can show you. I'm not supposed to talk about this in this class, but since we have time, let me talk about the beginning of the human beings. Let's see. Oh, well, it all started something like 7 million years ago. It's a long, long time when monkey or ape kind were changed themselves into human beings, developed or evolved into human beings, I should say. 進化したんですね。And the reason is, well, we don't know about the detail yet. We are still trying to look for the early time. There's few evidences, very few evidences, so we can't really tell. But there are so many theories about the beginning of human beings. And the major reason, the first reason would be the landscape change due to the geological movement. Everybody now knows that earliest human remains are from Central Africa, eastern part of Central Africa. And the entire earth is moving around, especially lands and the plates underneath and the ocean bed plates are moving around because of the rotation of the magma inside of the earth. And in some parts, magma flows out slowly, very slowly, and pushes the plates, comes between the plates and comes up and puts the plates apart. So plates were constantly moving in various directions. And one of the plates, Pacific plate, is coming toward Japan and sinks right down into beneath Japan, Japanese islands. So that's why we have a lot of earthquakes and a lot of volcanic activities and hot springs and tidal waves and things like that. But that happens all the time and everywhere in the world. Like on top of the Mount Everest, you find fossils of the clamshell shells. And that means the top of the Mount Everest used to be the bottom of the ocean. It's being pushed and pushed and pushed. So it was raised till the peak of the earth. You see, it's being moving around, never stays in one place. And so as the African continent, it used to be pretty flat, but it's been pushed from both sides, east and west. So naturally, they would form a mountain range, the flat areas pushed from both sides and raised like this. You see, you form a mountain, chain of mountain right here. And at the same time, there will be a great valley right here. The depression, this is sticking out. This is a depression area, ups and downs, and great valley area, African Great Valley, we call them. And that formation changed the climate and the entire environment, natural environment of this area. And because wind is blowing from west, and they carry all the humidity from the Atlantic Ocean and bring it onto the land. And when the wind hit the chain, mountain chain, it, I write it bigger. Mountain chain, it's not that big, but this is depression. And when the wind hit the mountain, it shakes off the humidity and becomes rain. It's a lot of rain on the west side of the chain. So the environment right here is a jungle, you know, tropic jungle climate right here, very hot and humid, and grows a lot of vegetation, all the tall trees, forests, and everything. It's a jungle. And our ancestors, apes and monkeys, they are very weak compared to lions and tigers and those wild ones, you know. They're very weak and they have to survive, but they cannot overcome those strong animals. So the only thing they could do is to live on the tree, high, way up in the tree, so that they could avoid the attack of the animal. They are tree living kind species. And same species were living here. And but valley, it's a large valley depression here. The wind goes over the mountain and blows into the valley, but this wind is dry because it lost all the humidity on the west side. It's dry. So naturally, the climate on the east side is dry, savanna. It's not a forest. It doesn't get much rainfall. So it's savanna. It's a prairie-like things. Grasses, not very much of trees, but grasses. And same species of monkeys were living here too, of course. And what they did, they couldn't hide in trees. They couldn't live way up in the trees. No jungle, no forest. Only grass growing, right? So probably that's the reason why they stood up. You know, the first definition of human being is 2 legs walking. You stand up and walk with 2 legs. You don't use arms and hands for moving around. And probably that's why the climate change made them stood up. Because there are weak people, I mean, weak kinds. And the only thing they could do on the west side is to live on the trees, safe right here. And there's no safe place in prairie, right? So the only thing they could do is to try to find the enemy as early as possible, as distant as possible. If you realize about the approaching of the enemy late, then you'll be eaten. And if you can find them way apart, then you can flee, you can run. And that gives you more possibility of survival, right? So they stood up, made their view higher than they used to be. And as your eyes goes up, your vision will be wider and you can see the distant area and you can find your enemy as early as possible. That's the only thing they could do, right? That's one theory. I like this theory. Probably that's true. Because they wouldn't be able to survive in this area, you know. So that was a starting point, but the standing gave them so much influence because for one thing, their brain became bigger, their head became bigger. That led to the development of intellectual ability. The reason why? 4-legged animal has heads on one side, one end. So they can't make it bigger. They can't make it heavier. Otherwise, you will lose the balance of the entire body. You have a limit of weight and size of your head when you're four-legged. But when you're standing up, you're holding the heavy head with whole body, entire body, straight up. So you can't make it bigger and heavier compared to the four-legged ones, right? That's one thing that happened, that really happened. And another thing is that your forelegs, you stood up, so your forelegs, arms and hands are free now, free from moving. You can use it for other things. And they started using for holding things, using something as tools, stone or logs or bones or whatever. And you use your hands. You started to use tools a lot more than four-legged animals. Apes and monkeys, they are four-legged, and human beings got more chance of using tools. And along with the development of brain growth, they started to make things, Many kind of animal would use tools, even the crows and things use stone to break nuts and things like that. But they're very smart. But they never make tools. They never create tools with their hands and things. No other species than human beings would do that. So that's the beginning of human beings. And they would develop their intellectual abilities, and they would create things, tools, as they wish. They could control their hands, and using of the fingers in complicated manner would lead more of your brain growth. That's proved already. So that's also another reason why they grew their brain. And then they became human beings. And well, there are other theories, a lot of other theories, but I don't think they're right. I think this theory is good. Well, you can just check all the theories through internet and try to find other methods, but they don't sound right. They sound stupid. So I'm into this one. Anyway, another thing, the very early stage, like 3 million years ago, there is an evidence of a human standing at the time already. And it's Tanzania, African country, Tanzania, Laetoli site. And footsteps were found in originally this was a marsh, muddy place, and there were footprints of the Australopithecus, very early man. And you can see 2 rows of footsteps, bigger one and small ones. Obviously adults and kids. And actually there's another row of footsteps right in the big ones. There's middle-sized footsteps right overlapping the big one, right inside. It's very peculiar. 3 sides, big, middle, and small. And what can you tell from this? You're a detective. You have to decipher something. You have to explain something from these. What's the story? What are they? Grown-ups, kids, and smaller footprints, grown-up maybe. What are they? Walking together to the same direction? They're family, aren't they? Grown-ups and kids. And this may be a female grown-up stepping on the male big ones, the same footprints, follow the same footprints. They may be a family, father and mother and kid. It's quite possible. And it's a lot safer to follow the father's footprints for mother to follow. And more important things, don't you realize something strange? This is grown up, this is kid. Don't you think it's strange? How about the distance between each footprint? Same distance, all the way, same distance here, kids and grown-ups. That cannot be true, right? In other words, if you look at it closely, the kids' footprints, these distances are too far for kids. And for adults, for probably father, these distances are too small, too short. Don't you think so? But they're all same distance altogether. What does that mean? They're walking together. You know, it's possible that kids may walk straight all by himself, and a male adult would follow him after by this footprint, so he could go this way. But then these may not be the same distances, right? But they're walking together. That's why kids are trying to make step wider, and probably father is caring about his kid and making his steps shorter because they're walking together. And you can't really see it from this picture, but both footprints, big and small, has deeper part in the left side. On the left side, it's deeper, the footprints are deeper. Maybe different. Oh, this is the same thing. You see, it's kind of slanted. Left side is kind of deeper, a little bit. Why?
Sorry, I can't see the slide, but are you showing the slide?
Oh, sorry.
Sorry.
I'm very, very sorry. Wait a minute. Shoot. There you go.
Thank you.
I'm sorry. These are footprints. Okay, I have to show it from this one. You see, bigger footprints, smaller footprints, and middle size inside the big ones, you know, here and here and here. And they're all in the same direction and same distance, each footprint. See, so they're walking together. And that's for sure. And the same thing. And the left side is a little deeper, slanted. Each footprints are slanted towards the left, both of them. What does that mean? Imagine, well, I'm sorry, none of you have kids, but eventually, I mean, in the future, you would experience this. But if you are walking with your kids, small kids, in hands, your hands are connected. You're holding his or her hand. Your left hand and kid's right hand are connected. Then it would make like this, because you are pulled down by, kids are small, so you're pulled down. So your gravity tends to go toward your kid shifted, you know. So left side is deeper. Your kid is held by father and his or her arm is up, you know. Daddy's tall, so your arm is pulled up. So naturally, your body tends to lean toward left. Your right side is pulled up, your left side is slanted and give more gravity. So naturally, your left side is deeper. You see? So they're walking together. Oops. You're walking together with the kid, and your wife is following you. 3 people walking straight, standing straight, and walking straight to one direction. It's a family, obviously. No. That kind of things. Well, we don't know the truth. We don't know the fact. It can't be for sure, but it's a possible explanation from this kind of evidences. You know, if you take a very close look, you can, if you observe it very closely, then you would be able to tell a lot of things. It's just like detectives, you know. And another picture is the same footprints analysis, and whether they were standing up or they were bending their knees like monkeys. Sometimes monkeys would walk on 2 feet, but their hip and knees are bent, right? They can't stand straight. So some people, some scholars in the States try to analyze whether these footprints were made by standing people or bent people. And this is a normal sample. This is a cross-section of the footprint. This is a normal people present. This is a bent knee, bent hip type, bent type footprints. You know, the forward area, this area is deeper, of course. It has more stress by the gravity. And laterally, the footprints in question is like this. So obviously laterally is not the bent type. It's more like modern type. So they were standing straight up. And this is a kind of study that some people are doing some kind of studies all the time. And this is very, very interesting to prove that they were standing straight like that. Okay, so much for the early people. And I just wanted to show you the how we can observe and think and try to explain about the historical facts. All right. Any questions so far? There must be a lot of questions, but you can ask them in the comment sheet too, of course. And we are running into this Renkyu holidays, but we're coming back on the next Friday, May 7th. So wish you have a good time. Well, under this condition, you may not be able to do so much, especially outside. Don't go into town. Try to stay home, and if you're around the campus, you just stay around in the campus, okay? And be careful. It's really spooky now. It's a lot more dangerous than last year. It's getting worse, so please be careful. All right.
Sorry, Professor.
Hey.
About the last slide, I have a question.
Okay.
The last footprint seems a bit more scattered compared to the modern sample. Is it just because of the material they were stepping on, or was it the age of the footprint?
Scattered.
Like the imprint seems more it's not as maybe clear.
Mm.
When you look at the American research.
This one?
Yes, the last one is not as clear as the modern one. Is it just because it's
this one.
very old footprint?
Oh yeah. Sure. It's over 3 million years old, you know. So it's not clear. Well, original state is mud. So already at the time, you know, it's not really clear footprints, but clear enough to define that these are footprints of the mankind. You see, it's different, of course.
I see. Thank you.
Yeah, it's not too clear, as you can see right here. But you can see fingerprints right in here, right here, inside the big one, you know. So, okay, any other question? Well, I hope you understood all the lecture today. It was kind of difficult to explain for me. All right. So I think I'll see you again next week.